company covering everything. I'm talking in news you ain't heard of, cause you know it's getting buried. Social justice, yeah, the stuff you need to know about. Fucking politics that the corporate news won't cover. You know they don't think that you could see under, but you can now, cause the people we cover, they may not be famous, but their stories should be heard. Yeah, every voice matters, we should rise and fall together, and that's why.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday at Progressive Insider and Hair of the Dog. I am Carrie Barber, and we're going to take a look at the week so far, some elections, primary elections that happened, and then try to get through what exactly we mean by defunding the police. So there's already a lot of misinformation about what exactly this is and what we're attempting to do. So yeah, we're already running late, so let's just jump in. Andy, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? I noticed we're going to be talking about the week so far.
Well, that's exactly what it feels like, because I am encouraged that people are still sticking with it, right? It's not trendy or a fad to stand up for equal rights and equal protection. This is our Constitution, our government that we're actually talking about here. So people are staying with it, and we're actually starting to see the results come of it, because had we just done, you know, like I saw a meme comparing how Congress members did a sit-in Congress, what was it, a year ago, 2 years ago, and it was great, 24 hours, and what did we get for it? Nothing.
We got a lot of lip service.
Right. If that's your goal, then yay. What is happening now is, I think that there are so many voices now who are being responsible and standing up and speaking and refusing to back down, that we're actually starting to see local municipalities. Some of them have disbanded the police altogether. And then what's going on in Seattle is a little bit of dystopian sci-fi genre fan fiction, but we'll talk about some of that.
Yes, we have some new cities in Seattle called Smithland and Johnsonland.
Yeah. So I was looking at the conclaves, and they've barricaded themselves, and it's not even Wild West, because in the Wild West that you had collaboration and our Hollywood version of what was happening in the West as white people moved across the country is not reality. We had community, even a sense of community, and an understanding that we are in this together. So,
well, and circle the wagons isn't even a thing this time, because who can afford the lumber to build one?
Right. That's right? Exactly right. So, yeah, it's an interesting mix, and it's a good contrast between Seattle and what's happening in Minneapolis. Minneapolis voted to disband their police force altogether, and for good reason. This police force has been investigated, and time again, they are ignoring their own policies. And in fact, we have, the video of chief of police, I believe it was a Trump rally, and wearing a white supremacy band. There are photos and all sorts of allegations coming out. So it's more than just policy. It's the people who are leading these efforts. We can see the result. It's bullshit. So I stumbled upon a really nice take on it. It's a little it's a little vulgar, but I think it gets straight to the point of what defunding the police is. So we'll get to that in just a minute. So good morning, Azalea. She posted hi. Want to make sure we give a shout out to Azalea. She's always,
hi, Azalea.
Yeah.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, she's always right here with us bright and early. Well, the rest of the daywalkers don't get up till noon. So good morning.
Clearly, she's on the East Coast.
Clearly. I
Either
don't.
that or on the West Coast and hasn't been to bed yet.
Well, that could be. That could be. So, yeah. So go ahead and chime in on this conversation because we know that there's comments, questions, a little bit of controversy around some of the stuff we're discussing today. So,
by the way, can we stop referring to them as weeks because they seem more like years? So if you're going to refer to last week's, say last year on Wednesday.
Okay, yes, last year, and it does feel like it feels like forever that we've been doing that. But in many ways, it has. 150 years we've been trying to have this conversation. 150 years we've been ignored. Finally, starting to be heard. So
that's right. Clearly, that the mantra is "Don't stop." Right.
Right, exactly. And it goes back to the quotes and lessons from history. The only time we've ever seen significant change is when times like this occurred, where it was sustained. So like the bus boycott, that was a year of people saying we're not going to ride the bus. And it took a year for them to finally cave. And that was Selma, Alabama. So how long are we in it for? Are we in it for systemic change or lip service? And I guess it depends on where you fall.
It depends if you want change or not, too, right? Like clearly, the establishment talking heads are going to do just enough as required to get people to settle down and be happy and go back to work, and So if this level doesn't work and people are still angry and still in the streets chanting, then they'll take it to the next level. And we have to show them that the normal way of doing business is not going to fly, right? We have a serious opportunity to completely restructure society because of the pandemic, because of the unemployment, because of the markets. It's just going to take time. It's going to have to show those establishment types that this is actually, we mean business, we understand what we're up against, and we're in it for the long haul. And as much as that might be discouraging, it's really the only way we're going to get change.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, Azalea just chimed in. She said, I think it's through protest we get change. And she's absolutely right. And I want to call everyone's attention. It's not just here. And it's not just around the world in solidarity with our efforts here. There are countries that are experiencing similar situations to us. So, for example, France. We saw the horrific headline of this very nice young man who is still being extraordinarily generous to the people who sexually assaulted him, beat him, sexually assaulted him, put him in the hospital requiring multiple surgeries. And these were police officers. He was not a threat. He was not committing a crime. He spoke to them, which apparently was enough for them to use a police baton to brutally sodomize him, requiring multiple surgeries. He is now recovering in the hospital, and even now he's like, I don't want violence in my name. But in France, they are protesting the same thing that we're protesting here. And then in Germany, we saw the same thing. So what was interesting in Germany is you had hundreds of thousands of people turn out, and one politician, an actual Nazi who had been elected, was arrested for setting fires to cars. So the same white supremacy element that we have here is trying to disrupt things and being incendiary, not to, no pun intended, but that's what they're doing. But I do intend that pun for the example of Riverside, California. Some handy video came out. Apparently this was only reported in the UK, every U.S. media ignored this one, but there was this white guy, I don't know his age, they haven't reported who he was exactly, who took his car, it looks like a Corolla, tried to run over protesters in Riverside, California. When that didn't work, he pulled into the intersection, turned his car around, and tried to light an explosive device. Well, he's still in the middle of the crowd, and this one guy, I don't know who he was, but he's brave as shit, grabbed it and threw it back in the guy's car. Right. So it exploded, and that
My
gentleman.
Toyota just exploded. Oh, what a feeling.
Right. Right. So he got what he deserved. But so as you know, people are trying to help him out of the car, whatever, it goes off again. And the end of the video clip, this guy is getting his ass whooped because he had intended to harm other people. Instead, it ended up blowing up his car. But none of that was covered in the news here. We had to get it from The Guardian. So up on their website, they have a write-up and the pictures, and you can see the video. It's just amazing that corporate media is still trying to whitewash what is actually going on here. To the point where it's emboldening the white supremacists who are saying that, you know, the Antifa are doing it, or police aren't doing it, or, you know, just the video and the photo evidence we're seeing of the police and sheriff's deputies slashing tires on vehicles. Right? So each one of those vehicles, I don't know how much it costs to put tires on your car, but I just priced them for my son and my husband, and my husband's truck is $600 for 4 tires, and my son, he's got an SUV, it was $265 for 2 tires.
Now they're making a guy with a Corolla that's selling his tires separately. Just check Craigslist.
Yeah, exactly. So
I think what we're finding now is, and we can be appalled and we can, you know, be flabbergasted about what's happening, but I think we're all beyond the surprise factor, right? I think that we have to understand that any of the bad actors in what's currently happening, right? They're all coming from an original dark place, right? They're all coming from evilness, right? So when you think about the human psyche and how things work, is there anything that you won't do to have your own narrative put forth, right? If you're coming from a dark place.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
right?
absolutely.
I think that that's huge. And I think that on the other side of that coin, the people that are protesting, you know, the people that we would like to describe as from the left, the progressives, and I don't want to generalize because, you know, there are people that identify by whatever party in the United States you will, that, you know, aren't necessarily evil or good per se. Let's try to keep this as nonpartisan as possible. But if you're coming from a place where you want to help people, you're coming from a place of light, right? So there is a line in the sand that you are not going to cross because it's against your moral standards. If you are a corrupt politician or a white supremacist, okay, you're coming from a place of evil, right? So you have to ask yourself, where is the line for these people? And I think in a lot of cases, there isn't one.
No, I agree with you. And we saw this with the gentleman, my apologies, I don't remember his name, the older gentleman, the 70-some-year-old peace activist, who has already been, in Buffalo. He's already been claimed by the Catholic bishop there as somebody who has been known for years to be a peace activist, a volunteer, and working for the general good. He's already been claimed by multiple organizations who stand by his character. And what we saw was the video evidence that he was assaulted and They basically, and it also came out he's a cancer survivor. So they did such harm to him. Like if I get into a bar fight and I hit somebody and they fall and hit their head on the pavement, I'm culpable for that. Not just my action, but the result of my action. So they put this man in the hospital, nearly killing him, and he's still trying to recover and come back from that. But even then, we saw the president and his followers negate all of that. So when you're coming from a place that is cheering on the behavior that we're seeing now and dismissing the racism, you have to go to a mental place where these are not people. Therefore, it's okay. That anybody on the left is anti-American, therefore an enemy. And this goes back to kind of what we were talking about on Monday, where we have become the enemy, and the we is not a political alignment. It's anyone who doesn't think like them. Well, that is the very definition and sign and symptom of fascism. We've seen this before. So this is where us standing up together, particularly white America, needs to stand up and remember who we are, that we have to say something, because it's not just about equality for our brothers and sisters. It is equality for all of us, because honestly, the person who will take somebody who's a person of color and marginalize them and dismiss them to less than an animal will do the same for anyone else when needed to justify their own behavior. So even if you're not sure that there's a problem with racism here, I want you to take a look at the logic that is required to excuse all of this, because you're going to be on that list too. So
and I think that as a people, right, a lot of times when you talk to someone who will identify, even openly, that they're a racist person, right, they're referring to a group, right? They're not referring to individuals. And a lot of the times that's because they don't know them. And the only narrative from people like that who say, well, that guy's okay, is because he knows him personally. So he's actually a human being. It's the black and brown people that I don't know that are just a generalization of a race of people that are bad. But my neighbor, who just happens to be a person of color, is all right because he was a friend of mine.
Oh, absolutely. And this is something that Malcolm X talked about. And it's something that has gone on for years. It's the phenomenon of the pink poodle, right? So Malcolm X wrote about him being like the class mascot with all of these white kids. And that's where the idea of the pink poodle comes from. And my son has gone through that too. And he's learned to, he is far more generous than I am. He differentiates people into either ignorance or malice. And he says 90% of the time they're ignorant. So they fall to that category that you talked about where, well, I know this kid and he's a hard worker and he's going to school and doing everything else. He's not like the ones that I see in inner city Chicago, which keeps coming up, by the way, the black on black crime. And I gotta tell you, that's not an argument at all. There's no validity to that, to propose that in relation to a conversation of peace officers that are sworn to uphold state law, local law, and the U.S. Constitution. So that is a non-starter with me. It is a right-wing talking point. It is fascist on its face. Don't start with me on that one. So, hey, Timothy, good morning. Timothy apparently is catching our show for the first time because he's like, wow, refreshing. Good morning, Timothy. Grab your coffee, mimosa, whatever. Jump on in the conversation. So So yeah, so we're gonna get back to that because I want to talk about defunding the police and what that actually means. But real quick, I want to give a shout out to a progressive candidate who reminds me of. We did an interview with Marie Nelson, or I'm sorry, Marie Newman, candidate for Congress who won her primary. She's a progressive. She ran twice against Dan Lipinski, who is a Democrat in name only. So she won, and she's going into the general. So we had another one last night that was just amazing. I'm gonna put her picture up here so we can all cheer. Paula Jean Swearengin. So anyone who saw Deadwood would read it as Swingen. This woman is amazing, right? So this is her second time running. Now lawn services started, so I'll speak up a little bit, but this is her second time running. She lost the first time, just like Marie Newman did, and this time she won. So her background is amazing. She went from literally nothing to now she has a chance to go to Congress, and a really good chance, actually. So she was the one that years ago, I don't know if you remember when Bernie went to West Virginia and he was talking to people who had lost their jobs at the coal mine and things like this. He hugged her on stage and she's like, Bernie, I think I need to run for office. And she did. So I think between her story and Marie Newman, this is a lesson for progressives, right? This is how you beat entrenched incumbents and money and everything else. You win on name recognition and you don't give up, right? So when we ask candidates to run for office, we need to make the case that, yeah, it's going to suck. It is going to, but we'll be here for you. And we want you to think of your race not as a 2-year race, but as a 4-year race. Because the likelihood of winning,
which is very, very important to remember that you know, especially as you know, trying to understand the American electoral system, right? It's that if you're running for Congress, it's every 2 years. It's not every 4 like the president, right? So that's important. That if it's a 4-year cycle, right, like as if you were running for the White House, but it's not as long as you, especially considering that the race starts the next hour after the last election ends, right? So that's important. I'm just thrilled that she was able to beat what's his name, Dan Rapupski.
Joe Manchin. So that guy goes. He goes. This is the guy that voted like 65% with Trump and was holding. He was another one. We saw this from the last candidate we interviewed from New York, New Jersey, about these incumbent Democrats who are hosting fundraisers for Trump. So it's just it's amazing. The audacity of some of these people. So I am thrilled that she won her race. One of the other reports that was coming out that I was not able to verify this morning is South Dakota apparently had a couple, not just progressives, but Native Americans. And I think it was Native American women won, but I'm having trouble verifying that. I do know that we had 40 Native American candidates step up to run or ran for re-election. Most of them are Republicans, but I think I am personally happy to see Native American, indigenous peoples run for representation, because what we're seeing in Washington right now is treaties. It's like out of the history books. We're ignoring and getting rid of treaties. We're mining on tribal land. We saw with the water protectors, what we're doing to waterways with the Keystone Pipeline and all of these things. I do feel like we need better representation and people who understand what it means to hold an agreement and protect people. So I'm one of those that you know what, how bad are the Republicans? the Native American Republican candidates. That I'm gonna reserve judgment because I am so thrilled to see that kind of diversity run for office. So if anybody knows who these candidates are, the incumbents are in New Mexico, Arizona, South Dakota, who are Republican, yeah, are, how
We're going
Republican?
to obviously have to talk to Warren in the sorting hat.
Yes, exactly. I mean, like, Warren, what did you see that I missed here? Because I went through the elections and didn't see a whole lot. So, I'm gonna follow up on that one. So let me see here. We
And
just
what was the was it Sewer Lips?
yeah, who was that?
That was one of the council members that
Oh yeah.
that they named. Remember,
Yeah.
and frustrated the hell out of him until he finally, just laughed, I think, or was beating election so badly that we don't longer see him anymore.
Yeah, that was
You'd have to go back to the footage, but I think it was Sewer Lips. I think is
exactly.
what they called it.
Yeah, that was in Malden, and Malden is making some big strides. So another key race that's coming up is Ed Merkley is being challenged by Joe Kennedy. Joe Kennedy
Right.
III. Joe Kennedy is running as a Republican, but he calls himself a Democrat.
He's a Republican.
Yes, yeah, and he thinks he can win, but Ed, who is from Malden, is kicking ass. So if you are anywhere near Massachusetts, in the East Coast, or frankly anywhere, and you want to help Ed, please step in and do that, because he is co-sponsor of the Green New Deal legislation and just about every progressive policy that we need right now. Joe Kennedy is not.
Not so much.
No, he's not taking after his uncle and his father in any way, shape, or form. So, Joe, what are you doing? It's crazy. So let's see. All right. So let's go back to, because Andy, I know we ran out of time last time. You have a story to tell. So just real quickly, I'm going to come back to the issue of defunding the police and what that actually means. But Azalea wrote a paragraph here, and I'm going to read part of it. She says, I know racism because I grew up with a racist father. Oh man, like that Archie Bunker type. And she said that she personally likes to remind white people of the horrors we've inflicted on other races throughout history. I knew white supremacists when I was younger and saw Hitler propaganda. I support people over race. We are all the same. It's great news that progressives are winning. Just wish we could get rid of the gerrymandering. And she's absolutely right, especially with the census coming down. If you have not already turned in your U.S. Census information, please do that.
Yes, please come to your senses.
No, census takers. We get counted. And what they do with the count, or at least supposed to do with the count, is a federal allocation, as the state uses the data too, to allocate funds for schools and other resources. My dog is going off again. We're being attacked by, I think,
Birds or squirrels.
yeah, something. So they're wide awake. So complete your census, and census, like in my state, it's the Democrats who are stalling redoing the districts. And we know, like in AOC's race in New York, they're trying to redistrict her out of a seat. So just because somebody has a D behind their name doesn't mean that they support democratic ideals. So pay attention to that.
Yes, D doesn't always stand for delightful.
No. And you know where I got that from? That was a state rep here, the one that I wrote the big article on, Rita Mayfield, when I first interviewed her. Hi Rita, good morning. I forgive you for the death threats, sort of. But I was interviewing her because she was opposed to rent control. Now, I knew at the time that she was being heavily funded by the Realtors Association, and she herself makes a lot of money off of it. So to me, it made sense that she would be against rent control because, as she told witnesses there, she said, that's my money you're messing with. But the quote that I got from her was, just because I have a D behind my name doesn't mean I'm going to vote for your legislation. And she was right. So make sure that you understand who you're talking to when we deal with things like gerrymander. Because look what happened in Georgia this last election. The gerrymandering is so bad, and the way that they applied resources to Georgia elections. There are great swaths of, in particular, low income and black neighborhoods didn't get to vote, or if they tried. Some of them were standing in line for 4 hours. That's anti-democratic.
In a pandemic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And you saw pictures of the line stretching on, and all of these reports of, oh, we can't. So once again, I'm going to go back to, are you telling me the country that put a man on the moon, the country that took a remote control RC vehicle and dropped it on a dime on another planet to send back pictures and video, cannot handle voting? Really?
Or will not.
I think that's it. The political will is not there. Trump said it himself, the more people who vote, the fewer Republicans get elected. So we have the Republican Party openly trying to disenfranchise voters, and then we have Democrats who are really Republicans trying to help them. So Stacey Abrams is one of them. And we like to celebrate her as, no, not cool. So, this came out last night. Speaking of...
Like what? I can't wait to hear.
Joe Biden is considering, the rumor is Joe Biden is floating this out, and this is how they do it. They float out a little article like, what if? To see what the pushback would be. And then if nobody really budges, then they do another one. And if nobody budges, then they announce it. So the rumor is Joe Biden is considering a woman of color as VP, but it's not Stacey Abrams.
It's not Liz Warren.
It's not Liz Warren. Yeah. Condoleezza Rice.
Oh, good Lord.
Yep. Yeah, Condi. So, there you go. There's your ultimate compromise for
Condoleezza Rice, or as she's known in establishment, White Rice. We're going to have to make sure that the spotlight is put on this, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We're now going. Joe must now have progressed to a point in his dementia that he thinks he's back in his 20s.
Got to be. Absolutely. Right? Mm-hmm. Yep, I would say that. So, real quick. So now I got to go through this really quick. Defunding the police. So defunding and disbanding are two different things. So for example, if you own a company and your particular a department is so bad off, you disband that department and rebuild. You take those duties and assignments and you put them elsewhere, or you retool everything. So what they've done in certain city councils is disbanded their police. It worked in New Jersey. And in fact, we saw all the police chiefs out there crying and moaning about, we're being treated like animals. Yeah, you are. And
you're acting like them.
Exactly. So what happened is when they went on their tirade last time, and for a month really refused to do their jobs, what we saw was crime went down. Complaints went down. So it begs the question, what are you really doing? Maybe you're doing things that are outside of the scope of what you should be doing, what you're trained for, and what you're best at. So this is where defunding the police comes in, and I came across somebody, I already told him I was going to steal it. So I'll read it really quickly, and I apologize for reading, like a sing-along here, but okay, so this is from my buddy Mike. I'm not going to say his last name unless he lets me do it, but he posted this. He said, "The idea to defund the police is about changing a damaged structure. For example, if you change your bed sheets, you don't just cover up the old ones with new ones. You have to remove the old sheets before you can replace them with fresh, clean sheets. And in this case, someone has quite literally shit the bed. We have spent the last countless years hiding that shit with fresh new sheets, but the shit underneath keeps coming up and staining any new sheets. At this point, the mattress is a loss. We can keep the bed frame, but other than that, we need a whole new bed. That is to say, we need to rethink how policing is handled in this country, between no-knock warrants for non-violent offenses, which frequently executed the wrong person, militarization of the police and police brutality, the culture of silence and protection from their own, qualified immunity, and we saw that in the case where the 18-year-old was raped, and she tried to sue, and they said, well, she consented. And so she had to go through a year and a half of threats, harassment, and intimidation, and those two officers just walked. So there was that. The silence and protection of their own, and beyond all else, the apparent systemic discrimination resulting in a society that fears those who should be their protectors. And we need to completely tear down and rebuild the system we have grown accustomed to. He says it will not be easy or comfortable, but we're doing the right thing rarely is. So the entire concept in a nutshell is that rather than having the police respond to something that is better handled by somebody who is qualified, trained, and not there with lethal force to de-escalate and handle a situation. So you only use the police for extreme dire need. We are not using the police in de-escalation situations and other things that could better be handled by other groups. And we're using that money to create those groups and help in our local communities. That's what it means. So that's the long and short of it. It's not a hard explanation.
I think if you want to rebrand, defund the police, I think we should say refund the police.
Well, like FUN, refund, or
yeah, refund.
make
right?
the police
like we take the current police cars and we give them clown cars, right? And just one, so they all have to get into the one car, right? Instead of batons, we give them those horns.
Yeah, or like the hammers with the little, the blow-up hammer things. Yeah.
I think that would be fun.
Why not? And you bring up a good point, because we gave them tasers that were supposed to be non-lethal. Here, try a damn taser. And what do? They're killing people with the tasers.
Right. It just makes a funny noise. It doesn't hurt anybody.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Right? It makes the sound of like one of those, what are they called? Whoopee cushions.
No. We just had the video come out of the guy in Austin who was killed by being tased 4 times, begging for his life. Had the TV crews rolling the film for a reality TV show. And, this guy died because he was tased. And Rome talked about it in his piece, Rome's Rebellion, that one of his friend's little brothers was killed by being tased over and over and over again. So Andy, we promised that you would tell your story.
Oh,
so,
yes,
please tell your story.
Now, I got this story, and I will give credit to the person that posted it, which is a good friend, especially to the MMT community, which is Fadl Kaboub. He posted this, and as a disclaimer, I'm not sure if this story is actually real or anecdotal, but it is, regardless, a very good story and rather funny. And so the setting is an older lawyer at what seems like a commencement style speech or a large auditorium of talking to young lawyers. And the story starts out as the lawyer that was the winner of the best lawyer of the year was this gentleman that went out and purchased a box of 24 rare and very expensive cigars. Okay. And he talked to an insurance company, and so he got a policy out on these cigars for a number of things, including fire. Okay. So he got a quote and accepted the quote, and so his cigars were insured by this company. And before he'd even made a premium payment on this insurance policy, about a month later, he claimed that the cigars were destroyed in a series of small fires.
Okay, I know where this is going. Okay.
All right. So, of course, when he submitted this claim, the insurance company looked at it, and of course, they rejected it, right, out of hand, because they assumed that the lawyer had consumed the cigars in the way that they normally would be consumed, so that they weren't going to just pay for these guys' cigars, right? So apparently, the lawyer sued the insurance company, right, and won. And in court, although the judge agreed with the insurance company that this was a frivolous lawsuit, he ultimately decided in favor of the lawyer, because why would you accept a policy against fire for a box of cigars? So figured that they should, and the lawyer was suing for $15,000, which covered the cost of his cigars, and of course, pain and suffering and whatever else happened that he was suing for, right? And so instead of appealing or continuing to fight against this, the insurance company decided that they would just pay the amount of money and let it be. But the best part of this story is the insurance company then, about a month later, had the lawyer charged with 24 counts of arson.
Oh, okay. Any story where you have an insurance company and a lawyer fighting, I'm all about it. It's the old adage of pigs in mud. So.
Yes. And quite honestly, I don't want to know if that's real or anecdotal, because it's just such a good story. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not even going to look into it.
Yeah. No, I like the messaging behind it, because the judge is like, if you're going to be stupid enough to approve a policy.
Right? Because you're going to take this man's money, right? As an insurance company, as frivolous as this might be, then I think the guy has a point.
Exactly, that's hilarious. Well, okay, so bring it around to conversations today, where people, white supremacists, fascists, are saying, "Oh, well, we don't support the looting." Hold on here. If you own a business and you have an insurance policy, looting is covered. What's the problem? So you are now prioritizing material goods that are replaceable, like the cigars, over the lives of your fellow citizens. Not an argument you want to make.
Saw something that was actually pretty interesting. Somebody explaining the difference between rich people and poor people looting. Poor people looting is quick and on the news. And rich people looting is much slower and not on the news.
Yeah, well, that's true, and it's legal. Yeah, all of this redistribution up has been going on for 4 decades at least. Totally legal. Absolutely. Oh, speaking of redistribution and asshole rich people, um, Elon Musk. He reopened his facility and our freedoms. He now has several cases of active COVID and on their assembly line. So he took a couple hits. Number one, in their investor call, the Model Y has some serious technical flaws. And so their stock took a hit. But it might have some flaws because people are getting sick at his facility. And they had a number of cases with COVID, and it's like most factories where there's no social distancing. There's this person maybe spraying down and mopping the floor, and you wear a cotton mask. But yeah, and the email that came out that made it all the worse was management wasn't going to tell the actual workers. They were just trying to keep it quiet because they're like, there's nothing we can do to protect them. Keep working. So yeah. Billionaire Elon Musk is trading your life for. So this was the other thing that came out. Elon is getting part of his money based on meeting production quota. So it doesn't matter if it works, doesn't matter if you die, just keep working till you die or you get sick or whatever else, because Elon needs to get that quota up in order to make his own money. Let's celebrate that guy.
Mm.
So, yay! So this is why when we started the show, I was like, yeah, this is the stuff that's going on this week. It's crazy. So there's
no, but none of this is new. You know, it's just bubbling to the surface. So I remember years ago, after, I think it was about maybe 6 months after the great financial crisis, when the company that I was working for at the time in the United States had declared bankruptcy, and you know, the Rick Wagner, who was the CEO of General Motors USA, had flown down in one of the company's jets to Washington to ask for a bailout. And at the time, the government said, well, why don't you sell your jets first and then we'll talk.
Yeah, exactly.
And at that time, there was a news article that came out in one of the Toronto newspapers that was talking about how the company had restructured and had asked both salaried and hourly employees to give up some things that were currently in their contracts in order to help the company save money, right? And I remember very clearly the very last line of that article was that although the hourly employees haven't had any gains since that time, the salaried personnel had already made back that money and was, of course, now making more. But they were afraid to give a raise to the hourly employees because they were afraid that their shareholders would be angry, because most shareholders now are only investing in companies that treat their workers badly.
Are you kidding?
End quote.
Did they say that?
That was in the article.
Holy shit.
And I'm reading this because it was clipped out of the newspaper and posted on one of the supervisor's offices in my area where I work.
That is insane. So I used to live in Dayton, Ohio, which is definitely Rust Belt state. And you had, Dayton is this weird anomaly, right? Is probably one of the most segregated racist cities I've ever lived in. But it also holds more patents per capita than any other city in the country. I mean, the Wright brothers and all of these black, white, everywhere invented things. So this is the heritage of the area, and it was kind of at the end of, or on the way to the end of, the Underground Railroad. So you had all of this sort of thing there. Is an amazing place to live, but then the Republicans had so segregated the city economically that it was really starting to hurt the way that the operations were going. And of course, you had national headquarters of the KKK are on First Street, one block over from the sheriff's. So, you know, aside from that, but this is what we saw with the GM plants, Daimler Chrysler, and all of these automotive people. The union would say, okay, we've got this contract, and it's really good for the worker that's been here for 10 years or more or whatever. It's not great for the new people who came in. So if you just came in 6 months, year, 2 years, you're not going to get anything. But look at this great package we have for the older worker. And it was this divide and conquer. And it kept happening over and over with fewer and fewer people benefiting. And you could just look at that, and I'm like, do you not see that you are selling out your brother in the union for your small benefit, and eventually it's going to be your turn? And then at the time, I worked at a very large corporation, multinational corporation, and they were doing the same thing with pensions. They were, you know, it used to be everybody got a pension, and a pension was a guarantee. And then I'm old enough where pensions were starting to go away. So what they did was wrote the policy and said, if you had been here for X number of years, you get to keep your pension. And if you're a new employee or you've only been here X, we're doing away with your pension. And of course, the same thing happened. The tenured employees went, oh, well, this is a good deal. You young folks should just keep your mouth shut and just let it happen. And I remember pushing back and saying, okay, today I lose my pension. What's to say that a year from now you're not going to lose? Oh, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't cut our pension. And sure enough, it wasn't a year, it was 6 months. They cut the pension for the people who had been there for 10 and 20 and 35 years. And I remember seeing colleagues who were nearing retirement shattered because of this. They got to keep the portion that they put into, but the company's portion, nope, right back. So so this is the whole divide and conquer, and the same thing that we're seeing now when we talk about police reform. It's a divide and conquer. Right? You have not personally been affected. You have not personally known somebody who's been beaten and killed. You have not personally sat down and tried to understand the issue. You have not personally put yourself in an uncomfortable position to try and watch some of these videos and recognize what is actually going on. So you're willing to take your comfort and your status quo to sell out your brother. It's coming for you. And I think that is the piece that I would like to leave everyone with today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you get a chance, there is a very wonderful interview. And this is one of the very few times that I'm ever going to say on CNN, when Anderson Cooper interviewed Carnell West, and it was because of George Floyd's funeral, and they wanted him to speak about the day and how he was felt and his opinions on stuff. And it's, I think that the segment was supposed to be quite a bit shorter than it ended up being. But because Dr. West continued to speak without breathing for 10 minutes, they really couldn't interrupt him, right? It was a wonderful perspective on if you're a white person and you would like to understand a little bit more about why things are happening the way they're happening. It was an absolutely wonderful speech, and I would recommend anybody listen to it and watch it on CNN with Anderson Cooper. It does a lot of explaining very well.
As much as I'm loath to do it because you've recommended it, I will go find it and post a link on this particular piece. So Andy said so, so therefore it will be done. But any final thoughts, Andy, before we get out of here?
Yes, I'm really looking forward to our series of to ending this year on Friday, and our subsequent 3 shows next year.
We'll see about that. We'll see if we can get to that. So, all right. So from all of us here at Progressive Insider and Andy and I with Hair at the Dog, thank you so much. Thank you to Tim and to Azalea for weighing in this morning. We appreciate your feedback and your comments, as always. Very insightful. So thank you for that. And try to have a good day. If you're going to a protest, now here's where I turn into everybody's mom. If you're going to a protest, you wear a mask. Do you understand me? You wear a damn mask. We already have 21,000 new cases. You wear a mask. You be safe. All right, that's it. That's my lecture. Have a good day.
Take care.